Welcome to your channel, Patriotic Alliance Fanbase. I am your host, Leocardo Adrianse. Thousands of South African children are still waiting to be placed in public schools. To make matters worse, our government has decided to also allow illegal foreigners' children to be placed in our schools, despite of the shortage of classroom space for our own children. Their reasoning behind it is because they have to practice the policy or laws pertaining to human rights that states that no child should be refused schooling, even if the parents are illegally in this country. For some, this is fair, but for others, this is unfair to some of our citizens who has been struggling, in some cases for years, to get their children into schools. Patriotic Alliance leader Charles Cilliers weighs in on the issue on Newsroom Africa.
Good evening, Masa. Look, I think that we've been vocal from our President Gayton McKenzie to Deputy President Kenny Kunene down. They've done work, they've been to actual schools and seen the situation on the ground. And our primary issue with the way that the country is being run at the moment through these laws is that we're making the country more attractive to people who want to migrate to the country illegally, right? And I think that's a problem, is that if you look at the policies and how we're implementing things, we're actually incentivizing people to come here. And that is going to create more people wanting to come here, right? And that's going to prejudice South African citizens who are going to have to stand in these queues, as Lerato has said, to compete for services that are limited and diminishing by the day, with people that effectively realize that if they can get across a river or somehow sneak across into whatever border, however they do it, that there are opportunities for them to get healthcare, education, and all sorts of services that are not going to be denied to them on the basis of the human rights that we uphold in this country. But we have been swayed too far towards just dispensing human rights to all comers. And we've forgotten that we have a basic obligation to our citizens as a government, that our primary obligation is to our citizens. And in approaching things in the way that we are, we're actually abandoning our own citizens and throwing them to the wolves and saying, well, compete with people from all over the place. I mean, we know that many are from Africa, but there's people from further afield. So this isn't really an African issue, but if you look at the growth rates that are projected for the continent, I mean, I was looking at stats the other day of people saying that Africa is going to have enormous growth rates, putting us at 4 billion people at some point during the course of the century. Now, if even just a fraction of those people say, well, life looks better in South Africa than it does wherever I am, be it Zimbabwe or wherever, how much pressure is that not going to put on our system? And are we not going to break and crack even further than we already have? So we need to start thinking today about the kinds of incentives that we're sending out there and the kind of message that we're sending out there. And of course, it starts with border control, right? But you can't keep saying, well, even if we strengthen the border, you're just actually increasing the stakes and saying that the reward of getting across the border still remains positive for you. So people will just try harder and they'll fight harder to get across the border because life is so welcoming to them once they're here. And that's a problem. And if it was the same everywhere else in other countries throughout Africa and so on, if they had the same generous human rights that gave everybody the same rights as us, then maybe that's a different story. But if you compare the way that other countries are being run, they're not quite so welcoming. Me as a South African, if I managed to find myself in any of the other 53 African countries and said, look, give me free healthcare, give my kids free education at a great level, etc., it's not going to be so easy for me. So I think there's an imbalance here, and we can't carry the weight of the world on our shoulders as South Africans. We have a lot of problems, and we need to fix those problems. And we can't fix everyone else's problems at the same time. So that's why, as the PA, we're saying that the patriotism that is in our name, we're the Patriotic Alliance, that patriotism and charity starts at home. So what message are we as government sending to our people when we insist on these policies? I don't think it's the right message. And I don't think, and our party doesn't, and the people who voted for us don't think so either.
Please support your channel by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. The more subscribers we have, the more the YouTube algorithm helps spread the Patriotic Alliance's message far and wide. Together, we can amplify the voice of the PA, South Africa's last hope for meaningful change.